You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down.
A note to our listeners. In light of the recent and tragic passing of Michael Reich, our team is taking a walk down memory lane to re-release this interview with Michael from January 2021. Michael's intelligence and exuberance are fondly remembered and appreciated by those who knew him. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Laura, is this our guest driving? It's Michael, right?
It is. I hope so.
All right, cool.
Today on the PR Wind Down, we're welcoming Michael Reich from Dead as We Know It creative agency in Brooklyn, Williamsburg. He's here to discuss how he got into the field, typical client challenges, how he sees ads and PR working together, and a whole bunch of other stuff. He is the executive creative director and owner at Dead as We Know It. And he was formerly the creative director of New York agencies Mad Dogs and Englishmen. I've heard of them. Are they still around?
I have heard of them.
And yep. Mad Injection.
Yeah, that was my, Mad Dogs and Englishmen. I was a founding partner in that must have been 1992.
Were you on Bowery?
Nope. We started out on, was it 11th Street? And then we moved up to 18th Street and 5th Avenue. And then we moved to Park Avenue South.
Were you in the Maxis Kansas City building? Or no? Yes.
No, we were close by, but not exactly.
I worked in that building at a PR firm for a minute. Yeah, I think I tried, not that I ever did advertising, but I think I tried to get a job at Mad Dogs, but I was not cool enough.
I did too.
Thanks. You weren't cool enough either. And now, okay, this whole interview is going to be different than I thought. It was going to be nice.
The secret is nobody was cool in the. That was, well, I could tell you all about it, but yeah, I was there for 14 years. And do you want to hear my whole story?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my background is when I came to the city, 87, 88, I was doing theater, and I was just living in the East Village, and I was just doing downtown theater. I was directing and acting, and I was in a ska band, just kind of living in a apartment and just
That's
down
what
there.
People did.
So I was living down there, and I was doing experimental theater. Well, that was my background. I was directing and I was acting and having a great time. I was doing improv, and just that's really what I was about. And I was also in a ska band at the same time. So I was doing both those and just having a good time. And
but wait, you weren't just in a ska band.
I was in.
You were in a known ska band.
Yeah, we were the top in this very small field. Yeah, but it was during ska's heyday. Yeah, it was a satanic ska band called Mephistopheles. But that was a blast. So I was doing both of those at the time, and then there was an actress that was in one of the shows that I was directing. Her husband was a creative director at Chiat Day, which was a big agency.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
And you said I have to get a real job one of these days, or what?
I really wasn't actually looking for a job. I was waiting tables and stuff, and he was working there, and I used to just hang out with him and during the show, and actually in the show that I directed, I was starting to, because it was all this Russian stuff. It was written in 1919 or 20 something, and I had I started bringing all these creating logos within the show, and I made it all about kind of marketing the soul, and I brought in all these sort of marketing things because that was just my aesthetic and stuff. And he was like, you'd be really good in advertising. And I was like, really? I was like, I don't know about it. He said, why don't you come in and you could just kind of hang out and see what we're doing. So I started doing that, and he was at Ogilvy at the time. So he'd come over to Ogilvy from Chiat, and I was just hanging out, watching what they were doing. And he said, if anybody wants this brief, they could do it. And I got the brief I had was for Reese's peanut butter cups. I was just like, oh, this is just fun. So I just started coming up with ideas. And I was never a writer. I never really wrote anything. And I never saw myself as a writer. I was an actor, and I could do characters and come up with ideas. So I just started doing characters and funny thoughts and just, kind of doing the characters and then writing what I thought the characters would say on paper. And they ended up buying some of the work I presented, and I ended up producing work even before I had a job. So I kind of fell into it backwards, but I really wasn't looking for a job. And I just saw it as like, wow, instead of creating like 2-hour plays, I could do 30-second ones and have fun with characters and storytelling. And there's a lot more money going into them than the plays that I was directing, and a lot more people were seeing them. So I was like, this is a lot more fun.
So did you get hired there full time?
Yeah. I remember it was 1990. I actually remember I went to Hershey, Pennsylvania, to Hershey's to present my Reese's Peanut Butter Cup spots. And while I was there, the account person, heard that I didn't really have a job there. I was just like an intern. And he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Okay." He said, "Don't tell the client that, because that's." So I didn't realize I was doing something really verboten for this thing. But
right, it's because they're paying their account people like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and none of them can do anything at all. They were ineffective, and they bring you in, and they probably gave you like $10 an hour.
I wasn't even getting that. I was having a great time, and I was like,
so
anyway.
Funny.
So then they hired me.
Right.
I got I remember my first paycheck. They were like, "You're going to get $25,000," and I remember just going, $25,000. I was picturing a room filled with 25,000. I was going to roll in it, and that was going to be my dream.
Like Daffy Duck or something.
Oh, I was like, I never seen. And then of
You're
course
like swimming, like.
I was like, yeah. And just the idea.
How long did you stay there?
I was there for a year.
Oh, and then what did you do?
Well, then what happened is the guy that brought me in, that was the husband of the actress that brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
He left after a year because he was like, fed up with the bureaucracy or, with a big
Mm-hmm.
agency. And he said, "I'm going to go start my own agency." And his name was Nick Cohen. And it was called Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
Oh, so, he started this firm and you like went with him?
To be honest, what happened is he left the agency, and also right at the time, I think Ogilvy lost like a load of business, and they laid off a lot of people.
Oh.
It was also for me this whole idea of having different teams. Well, first of all, just the term team like denotes sports. And it was like, and we're having a creative shootout. So you're going against this team and this. And I really hated that too, because I saw that happen when I get really competitive and you really want to win, and then you don't win. And you're like, it was just very, suddenly I went from being a creative where we're all working together and trying to do something great together to suddenly like I'm on some game show. I don't like being competitive and I don't like losing. And I just find,
you don't like to be competitive, but if you are competitive, you better effing win. Basically where you.
But basically, I don't like losing.
So you don't want to even go there because you're going to have right. Okay. So, well, it's funny because April and I have talked amongst ourselves and to a couple of people we've interviewed recently, PR guys who don't like the team mentality in PR because they think that it takes away from the actual people who are really doing the work. Yeah. So the whole team gets credit, even though it was only 1 or 2 people who actually like did anything, and they're not getting any, acknowledgement. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but
for me, it's more just like, hey, it's pretty much if you have teams, it's a game, right? So you've got 3-4 teams, and you're saying, hey, everybody pitch me your best ideas, and then you're developing it with each one as a creative director, and then you're going in with this campaign or this campaign, and then which one gets picked is the one that wins or goes ahead. So it's definitely a way to do it. I feel like my job is to help hone a big idea, focus it, and then try to find work that moves in that direction or focuses in that direction. And I feel like with a lot of agencies, there might not be that focus of this big idea, or it might be like, hey, this is the brief. Now everybody hit me with a different way to do it. So it's not so focused, and then you're kind of, it's a bit more of like a crapshoot of like, hey, let's do a few different ways and see
spaghetti on the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, and see which, so to me, I feel like it's not such a creative direction job. It's more of a creative picker.
So you stayed there for like 13 years, did you say? And then did you establish your own shop?
Mad Dogs had started out, we were just like creatives, and we're, just working for, we started out just a few of us and working directly with clients and and just doing stuff. And we weren't like this big agency process. We weren't trying to be that. But then we grew a lot bigger, especially with the .com that made us, we were up to like, I think 40, 50, 60 people at some point. After the recessions, the second recession, the third recession happened, suddenly we were finding clients were coming to us, but they didn't have the money for the whole rigmarole. They'd be like, hey, I just want to run some ads, or I want to do some stuff. And they were like, well, this is what we charge. It was the agency of record. We give you planning, we account servicing and media. We were a small, bigger agency. It was the same model. And people were just like, we really don't have that money, So we were finding that we were like not getting a lot of business. We're missing these big agency of record retainers. So what we're thinking about doing is selling the agency a little bit more a la carte. So you can get agency of record if you want. You get the whole kit and caboodle, the whole dinner special, or you can get planning if somebody just wants to come, because some people were just saying, hey, we want to figure out who the brand is or who our target is. So we could just do planning division. And we also thought we would do a division of people that just want some ads. So in and out. And the idea was that I would run it separately. It was more, what can we do to help move this thing, And
right. There's opportunity here, and how do we zero in on it, and how do we bring it to life, or where do we put it? Yeah,
exactly. And some of that is creative, some of that is PRs, it's looking for a big idea. It's just
so that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. How do you see advertising and PR work together, and did you ever have opportunity to do that back then or now?
I mean, I've never really worked hand in hand with PR people that I've had a really successful relationship with. And I think I mentioned this to you. And it's something that to me would be so essential. And I'm not saying anything about PR firms or people. We haven't had that many chances. But my feeling is like,
and you can badmouth them to us.
It's okay. Well, those PR people and the huh. No, it's but I feel that because we've worked with a lot of our clients with very little money, for me, the best advertising should generate PR. It's like the ideal ad should not have any media money behind it, and I've thought this before the internet, this was to me always the case. Nobody wants to spend media money.
I have a good example. I think it was the Wall Street Journal, or hold on, maybe the New York Times, just did a huge story, I think yesterday, about, do you recognize this? The Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. They did a huge, I had no idea there was like this whole like decades. I was like, I thought I was the only one who had a stack like of 900 in my kitchen in both of my apartments. And no, and so there was a whole huge story about it. There are people who write about marketing and advertising, and there are huge stories, and there's publications about. I mean, I used to do PR for marketing when I worked at Clear Channel Entertainment, and we would get into Brand Week and to Ad Week and to Ad Age, and all the things that we did there would become stories. And because some of these ideas or creative themselves, like that coupon, is like an interesting enough like phenomenon that it turns into media coverage, right?
I think that should be the goal of it. Why wouldn't any client want to not spend media money? Like, that should just be a given. I mean,
and if you could say money on PR, you're saying?
Well, spend it on doing creative that gets PR and having the PR people that can PR it. Because look, the best PR person can't take something that isn't interesting and make it interesting. I mean, maybe they could try, but...
Wow, you're like light years ahead of a lot of people with that statement.
Well, but I think that's right. I mean, and I'm sure PR people, like, I'm sure that's your biggest issue. You're like, you're giving us something that isn't
not
interesting.
News, right?
We have to turn something into. So, I mean, I think they have to work hand in hand,
Yeah. I was going to ask about examples. I want to hear about your most PRable ads that you've ever done that got the most media coverage.
I mean, just going back to the Village Voice ads that we did back in the day. I mean, those got a lot of PR and those got picked up, especially in the ad trades at the time. And those were a place that people went. So those really were like just because they were, first of all, not just that they were cheap, but they were really kind of bad mouthing the Village Voice. They were very self-deprecating and making fun of the kinds of people that read it.
But it was in the spirit of what the readers of the Village Voice were really like too. So you hit it right on.
And making fun of like that they were liberal or misunderstood, or making fun of the people that would be that don't read the Voice. So it was really, I mean, we're trying to do stuff that was really simpatico with the reader. So that was one.
Was there any brand, like consumer product?
I mean, we've done stuff for like, well, when we ended up, and I'm jumping ahead, but when I started my agency, Dead as We Know It, we've done some stuff where for the Kraken spiced rum, basically our whole thing was we really saw our target as kind of like a small niche of like the cooler, darker people that love the anti-hero, that were drinking or used to drink Captain Morgan, but these are like the cooler, darker people. So we saw every opportunity what the Kraken would do as like subverting things. So we did this one thing where we bought some billboards in, I think it was Chicago. We made it look like a regular Kraken billboard with just a big bottle there. Then we had the Kraken, which of course is this giant squid, mythical squid. And we had one of its tentacles actually leaving the billboard, and we built a fake side of the building that looked exactly like the building with the brick and all, and a window, and it was pulling a woman out. So it's a mannequin, but it looked like it was like leaving the board and pulling her out. She's like, ah! Maybe another man looking like it. And so it was really just kind of, shocking, and looked really like, bursting out of its thing. And that, this was in the age of the internet. People were putting stuff on it. It was on BuzzFeed before we could even PR it. And that got a lot of attention and stuff. We did a bunch of really controversial ads for Manhattan Mini Storage. We did, we did something actually for Macura and Marvel, where they just wanted some kind of really cool kit. Like we made it look like a test to be part of SHIELD, to be part of their secret organization. And you would take all these things and it had vials in it and different things, and it had like a scorpion in a bottle. And we had all these funny things like, that you're supposed to do just to see if you were,
sea monkeys. Something.
But it was like things, take this thing and put the scorpion on your tongue. If you're, can hold it for, but it was all these like sort of tests of bravery and of strength and all these things. And it was in this dark black box, and it was sent out to, I think a lot of them were sent out to the automobile press. And I think somebody got one of these kits and they looked at it, I don't know, they thought it was cool or didn't. And then they put it in their trash, and somehow it created a massive bomb scare. And somebody called it in. It was like half of Detroit cleared out due to these things. And we're like, so I don't know if that's good press or bad, but I think we shut down a major area for a while.
Oh my God, unwittingly, huh? That's funny. What are your biggest client challenges? Like, I would imagine, well, maybe the kinds of clients that you get are open to this stuff, but is it hard to push this stuff through, or is there other kinds of challenges that are more prevalent?
I mean, obviously we're trying to push things, and we're trying to be as wild as possible, or we're looking not so much to be wild, but we're looking for stuff that people are going to talk about. I think the biggest client challenge with all clients, with all things, I think they are so set on making sure that an ad is somehow right, that it gets the product right, or gets their messaging right, or says the right thing. The way I see it is it's almost like a lot of clients see the advertisement. It's almost like doing a book report in school. It's like,
this book is about,
like, I know this book, I know this brand, I know its history, I know it all, and I just have to reflect that in the most correct manner. And I think that's the biggest problem. And I think it's important to get your brand spirit right and ethos right. I think that's the price of admission. And I think the important thing is like, it's not about getting it right or about capturing it. Advertising or PR or any things that we do, it's a catalyst. It's there for a reason. It's to make something happen. It's to make people interested in it, to make people talk about it, to put it on the radar. And if it's not doing that, then we have done nothing. Then we've just done a film that feels good to the company. And I think a lot of times they look at it and they go, yeah, this reflects how we feel about the product.
Right. And that kind of stuff should probably be at their annual meeting, not a public advertisement, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I mean, I think it's also reflects how they want to think that the public are seeing it. They kind of start out with A and think, well, how do we move that into B? Make that, what do we do with that? And my feeling is like, okay, well, you know what A is, which is your details of your product, you know what it is, you know what you want to communicate. But what is your C? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, where do you want to be? And then our job as advertising people and PR people, as communicate, is to create B. So my feeling is the biggest problem that a lot of clients have is they're not saying, hey, where do I want to be? What do I want to have happen? Rather than they're just like looking at the A and going, well, how do we do something with, you know, the stuff that we know to be true? You know, I mean, I kind of go back a lot to when you say with the biggest problem that clients have.
Or
And I'm not,
the biggest challenge that you have.
they're always like, hey, I don't want to really, I'm worried about taking chances with any advertising. And it's like, my feeling is always like, look, you're about to spend a few $1,000,000 or whatever you're about to spend. But the biggest risk you have is not getting noticed, is all that money going down the toilet. What is your other risk? That you're going to go to jail or you're going to, I mean, I guess it's losing their job, but it's like, I don't think there's been a lot of ads or many that have like tanked a company.
Do you have any favorite ads?
I mean, I like these ones that really kind of, you know, different things that turn the corner. Like I remember the whole Xerox Monk ad that ran, I think it only ran like once back in like the 70s.
What
And
was
like,
that?
oh, it's like, I'm so going to date with my original ads. It's like, then Henry Ford, he did his greatest. Well, it's a really famous ad.
They cranked up the motor.
Yeah, but it was an ad at the time. I think it started out with this like, man, you look like a monk, you know, his shaved head, round face, chubby guy. And I think he just kind of was very quiet, walking through a monastery, and you hear all church music. He walks into the head deacon or head monk, and the monk says to him, "It was like, I have a task for you. We want you to transcribe all of the Psalms from this to that." And he like hands him this huge stack of papers, you know, huge, and he just looks sad. And then you just see him walking through the monastery with long, quiet shots, and ends up in a room that's a Xerox. It's got a Xerox machine, and it was also, I think they were kind of a bit new at the time. And you just see him running all of these manuscripts through the Xerox machine. You know, the head priest, and the priest looks at him, and he's like, "You're finished. It's a miracle." And you see this priest look up to the gods. But I think it was very famous at the time, but I think it only ran once. And it got all this press. It's a prime example, and everybody knew it. It was kind of a famous ad. And I think it's one of these things you find out later, oh, it only ran once or twice, but it got that kind of talk value.
Right.
Wow.
They didn't need to spend a lot of money on running it a lot because
somebody
else did. A lot of people did it for them for free. Right.
And this is long before the internet. I think that was one. And then my favorite ad is from that time period. I've had lots of ads since then, but I remember coming into the city, because I'm from Long Island, but I would come into the city and being on the subways. And I remember the ads on the subway platforms where it was, you don't have to be Jewish to eat Levy's. And it was pictures of like a Chinese man or a Native American or a Black person eating it. And with these wonderful, wonderful portraits. And of course, I'm Jewish, so I think they really connected with me. And I was like probably 7 or 8 and just going, and I still look at them and I just like smile, and just the photography was great, and the casting and the expressions. And I still think those are just such a gold standard, and like really, I would say controversial, but in a very endearing way. So it wasn't trying to be, you know, risque, or, you know, and I love that. I love things that are really shocking in an endearing way, you know, to seeing the multiculturalism and just that kind of voice. So but then there's been lots of ads I've loved over the years that people have done. And
so I find it interesting that you were not, oh, I want to be in advertising, and yet you remember these 2 ads from when you were quite young. So it was still in your...
Is that his DNA?
This is going to sound really pretentious, but like I love like iconic things, visually or sound, or like I was really, you know, I was in a band and music. I love album covers. I love logos. I was really into punk and ska, and I loved like all the artwork from all the two-tone records, or all punk logos with the Ramones, and And I mean, just talking about PR, I was doing, I came up with my band's name and theme and logo, which was Satanic Ska for the whole family. And our theme was Satanic Ska
For the whole
and
family.
Mephistopheles. It was this pun on the devil's name. But I also knew that, like, hey, this is going to get PR. People are going to have a story to write about. And I used to write all the press releases for it. The way I thought of it is like, okay, there's hundreds of writers sitting next to a computer looking for something to write. So the more you could kind of give them the story and help them and say, this is what it is, and give them something, the more they'll be grateful and take the ball rolling. So I was just thinking, these are also smart, creative people. So what's going to inspire them?
So you've done PR. I don't think that's interesting.
Yeah, and I just never thought of it as PR. I just thought I was being pushy, but it was like,
I mean,
I wasn't like, let me run some videos, let me run some. We had no media money, zero. So it was getting picked up in magazines and getting run on MTV. I mean, we were looking for free advertising, and that's what that was, and on radios. So because we were making our money in T-shirt sales.
Right.
That's amazing.
Right.
So how do you embody a brand? How do you come to the place where you got the book report right?
We've actually developed a system here.
Really?
Yeah, we actually have a whole, I mean, it was really just the way I see things, and this is what Dead as We Know It is. We started this agency, after Mad Dogs closed, because I really wanted to do something that was, I actually had a dream one night that I had an agency called Knobs, N-O-B-S, so it was no bullshit. I was like, how do we work directly with clients? How do we just get to the core of what it is? And the system that we do at Dead as We Know It is, we've got a whole process, and we call it brand realization. And it really is, we see, without getting into all the details of it, but in its rawest form, is what really identifies like our target as like one person, as a human being. Who are they like? What are they like? And we try to get really specific and see them like as a character, just so we really could name that person, like, who is that in a film? And I'll even say like, oh, who's that? And really get to know him. So it's not just like, he's a male, 25, with, like, what is he into? What films does he or she into? What are they like? What kind of jokes would they make? We'll quite often sit in the agency and go, it's like Gwen, right? Oh yeah. Or it's like Chris, or, we'll say that. So that'll be our person really identifying that. So we see that on one side, and we really boil it down to like, well, what drives them? What gets them out of bed? And I'll say, what is their driving force? And it might be like meeting chicks, or it might be looking good, or it might be, getting rich. We really just try to boil it down, like, what's their driving force? But we also do it on the other side. We think about, how do we turn our brand into a character, and really, what is their driving force, and really think of them as a person. And I know a lot of agencies will talk about this, but we really try to boil it down to, of your philosophy and your driving force. So we really try to turn that into a character and really see the brand as a character, because character, from theater background, is, they say character is described as who you are is how you do what you do. And that's what describes a character. Because once you know personality, everything falls into place, and it's a no-brainer. I think until brands figure that out, they've got nothing. And it's the one thing that all great brands have in common. It's like, if you think about Apple, you have a very good sense of their personality and what feels right for them and what feels wrong. Or Coca-Cola or Levi's, or any of these brands we take for granted that are just these monoliths. But what most brands don't, they think, oh yeah, well, they're like that because they've been around forever and they've done. It's like, no, somebody consciously made that happen.
So do you have anything that you want to, plug for yourself or your company? If you could advertise for yourself right now.
We're doing lots of great stuff. So I mean, we're always looking for, great clients that we're really simpatico with and really, are excited to work and stuff. We work very personally, and so I'm always looking for people that are excited. I'm also looking, we're looking for great people to hire and to work with, on all sorts of levels. And, we generally don't like have positions open, but when we meet exciting people that are passionate, somehow positions developed for them and roles.
That sounds like
developed.
April. That's how she approaches her company.
Oh, really? I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you for so much of your time. I know this has been a big chunk of the afternoon, or evening.
No,
For dinner.
this is great. Well, thanks, guys. And stay in touch. Love it.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Michael.
you too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And many thanks to our guest, Michael, for joining us today. We had a very interesting interview.
Very interesting. He's amazing. Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions. As always, we appreciate your support. So please share our show with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating.
And if you have an anonymous PR horror story of your own, send it our way at the contact. Send it our way at the contact email below the episode notes.
We can't wait to wind down with you again.
Bye.
Bye.